Alfred Adler, the renowned Viennese psychologist, wrote a book entitled What Life Should Mean to You. In it, he wrote, quote, "It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring." End quote. And I have to agree with that. Hey, everybody, welcome to Bobina's Book Nook, BBN, a division of RC Squared, a podcast for the people. You guys, my name is Regina Connell. Welcome, welcome. So I do have the camera off, but I'll turn it on just for a few minutes. I am running a TikTok live simultaneously. We are streaming across the Rumble platform, the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, now known as Meta, and YouTube. You guys, thank you for joining me. We are in part 2, and forgive me for getting it a little confused. The way it's not really laid out in chapters, it's kind of looks like it's laid out by parts and principles. So this is the way I titled it: how to win friends and influence people. Dale Carnegie. The only thing I disagree is the only book you need to lead you to success. We believe in our household that would be the Christian Holy Bible. That's the first book we go to. We like to read other books as well. Anyway, with that said, you guys join us tonight at 8 p.m. and we are going to be launching out the very beginning, Genesis 1:1. We're going to be reading the Old Testament in chronological order tonight. We will cover Genesis chapter 1 through 5. And we'll stop at verse 23 because that's where Enoch comes in, and we'll slide in the Book of Enoch. So you guys join us. We're going to be reading it as we did the New Testament. Read the New Testament in 93 days. It was our TNT 93 series, and we just closed that out this past Sunday with part F. It is finished, so that was exciting. I love to read. It is raining out today, so I couldn't think of a better thing than to jump on here and enjoy books with my friends. You guys, please leave any and all feedback, and please hit that like, share, subscribe, follow, whatever is applicable in whichever platform that you are on. You guys, thank you for joining us. And look, if you want to sew in further, just watch the whole of the content. It helps us break through the algorithm and get noticed in the index. All right, so we are starting out part 2 of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm going to play a couple of clips for you guys just to kind of remind you where we're at. And so the first one is you saw it in the intro, but I'll play it again. And it's the impact of genuine interest in Alfred Adler, the renowned Viennese psychologist, wrote a book entitled What Life Should Mean to You. In it, he wrote, quote, "It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring." End quote. And I have to agree with that. When did we get away from the face to face? When did that happen? If that is true for writing fiction, you can be sure it is true for dealing with people face to face. I spent an evening in the dressing room of the great magician Howard Thurston the last time he appeared on Broadway. For 40 years, Thurston, the acknowledged dean of magicians, had traveled the world, creating illusions, mystifying audiences, and making people gasp with astonishment. More than 60 million people had paid admission to his show. He had earned millions of dollars. I asked Mr. Thurston to share with me the secret of his success. And let's remember, back in that time, this book was published in 1936, and he says through his own writings that it was in the making for more than a decade, maybe even possibly 2 decades, a lifetime of work that he has been working on himself. So, back then, face-to-face was really the only option one had as far as sales or anything like that. I mean, I think even back then you kind of had to be somewhat of a wealthy family to have any kind of phone service. Well, today in the digital matrix, aka matrix world, it does make it a little more challenging, I think, because there's so much uh disingenuity out there, if that's even a word. So, anyway, you guys, let's jump back in. We are in part two of 6 ways to make people like you. And we got into part one yesterday. And I will do better at trying to outline the book just as Mr. Carnegie and his good daughter, Donna Dale Carnegie, have. And let's get started, you guys. I'm going to turn my camera off as this was always meant to be audio anyway. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. So, a simple way to make a good first impression. Charles Schwab told me his smile had been worth $1 million, and he was probably understating the truth. For Schwab's personality, his charm, his ability to make people like him were almost wholly responsible for his extraordinary success. And one of the most delightful factors in his personality was his captivating smile. And I do want to make a confession to everyone. This is my first time reading it with y'all. It was a gift from my husband's boss. My husband had mentioned that he'd like to read this book, and I'm an avid reader. So I said, hey, let me put it on audio for you. And it was going to start out as a personal project that kind of parlayed into this. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. Let's continue on. Actions speak louder than words, and a smile says. And with that said, I usually have a unique advantage as I've usually read the text before. I have not with this book, so I'm reading it for the first time with you, and I gotta say, I'm enjoying it. I truly am. So actions speak louder than words, and a smile says, "quote I like you. You make me happy. I am glad to see you." End quote. That is why dogs make such a hit. They are so glad to see us that they almost jump out of their skins. So naturally, we are glad to see them. A baby's smile has the same effect. I agree. I've always said that, being near an infant is the closest to Jesus in the flesh that one could ever come. All right. A baby's smile has the same effect. Have you ever been in a doctor's waiting room and looked around at all the glum faces waiting impatiently to be seen? Dr. Stephen K. Sproul, a veterinarian in Raytown, Missouri, told of a typical spring day when his waiting room was full of clients waiting to have their pets inoculated. No one was talking to anyone else, and all were probably thinking of a dozen other things they would rather be doing than wasting time sitting in that office. He told me he told one of my classes, quote, there were 6 or 7 clients waiting when a young woman came in with a 9-month-old baby and a kitten. As luck would have it, she sat down next to a gentleman who was more than a little distraught about the long wait for service. The next thing he knew, the baby just looked up at him with that great big smile that is so characteristic of babies. What did the gentleman do? Just what you and I would do. Of course, he smiled back at the baby. Soon he struck up a conversation with the woman about her baby and about his grandchildren. As and soon the entire reception room joined in, and the boredom and tension were converted into a pleasant and enjoyable experience. End quote. An insincere grin? No, that doesn't fool anybody. We know it is mechanical and we resent it. I am talking about a real smile, a heartwarming smile. Genuine, real. Yes, I like that. An insincere grin? No, that doesn't fool anybody. We know it is mechanical and we resent it. I am talking about a real smile, a heartwarming smile, a smile that comes from within, the kind of smile that will bring a good price in the marketplace. Professor James V. McConnell, a psychologist at the University of Michigan, expressed his feelings about a smile. Quote, people who smile, he said, tend to manage, teach, and sell more effectively and to raise happier children. There's far more information in a smile than a frown. That's why encouragement is a much more effective teaching device than punishment. End quote. The employment manager of a large New York department store told me she would rather hire a sales clerk who hadn't finished grade school if he or she has a pleasant smile than to hire a doctor of philosophy with a somber face. The effect of a smile is powerful, even when it is unseen. Telephone companies throughout the United States have a program called, quote, phone power, end quote, which is offered to employees who use the telephone for selling their services or products. In this program, they suggest that you smile when talking on the phone. Your quote smile comes through in your voice. And I will attest and witness to that. I'll turn my camera on for a second. So I read the same thing in an article that, if you smile as you answer the phone, that it does come through. And it truly does. I agree. All right, let's keep going. So remember to smile, smile, smile. Mr. Robert Cryer, a department manager for a Cincinnati, Ohio company, told how he had successfully found the right applicant for a hard to fill position. Quote, I was desperately trying to recruit someone with a PhD in science for my department. I finally located a young man with ideal qualifications who was about to graduate from Purdue University. After several phone After several phone conversations, I learned that he had offers from numerous companies, many of them larger and better known than mine. I was delighted when he accepted my offer. After he started on the job, I asked him why he had chosen us over the others. He paused for a moment, then he said, quote, managers in the other companies spoke on the phone in a cold, business-like manner, which made me feel like just another business deal. Your voice sounded as if you were glad to hear from me, that you really wanted me to be part of your organization. And that is important, I think. I think that's very important. Excuse me. Quote, you can be assured, Mr. Cryer concluded, that I still answer my phone with a smile. The chairman of the board of directors of one of the largest rubber companies in the United States told me that, according to his observations, people rarely succeed at anything unless they have fun doing it. I'd have to agree. This industrial leader doesn't put much faith in the old adage that hard work alone is the magic key that will unlock the door to our desires. Quote, I have known people, he said, who succeeded because they had a rip roaring good time conducting their business. Later, I saw those people change as the fun became work. The business had grown dull. They lost all joy in it and they failed. I have asked thousands of business people to smile at someone every hour of the day for a week and then come to class and talk about the results. How did it work? Let's see. Here is a letter from William B. Steinhardt, a New York stockbroker. His case isn't isolated. In fact, it is typical of hundreds of cases. I have been married for over 18 years, wrote Mr. Steinhardt, and in all that time, I seldom smiled at my wife or spoke 2 dozen words to her from the time I got up until I was ready to leave for business. I was one of the worst grouches who ever walked down Broadway. When you asked me to talk about my experience with smiles, I thought I would try it for a week. So the next morning, while combing my hair, I looked at my glum mug in the mirror and said to myself, Bill, you are going to wipe the scowl off that sour puss of yours today. You are going to smile, and you are going to begin right now. As I sat down to breakfast, I greeted my wife with a good morning, my dear. and smiled as I said it. You warned me that she might be surprised. Well, you underestimated her reaction. She was bewildered. She was shocked. I told her that in the future she could expect this as a regular occurrence, and I kept it up every morning. This changed attitude of mine, this changed attitude of mine brought more happiness into our home in the 2 months since I started than there was during the last year. That's a heavy statement, especially for a married couple. All right, let's continue on. We only have a couple more pages. This one's really short today. All right. So, as I leave for my office, I greet the elevator operator in the apartment house with a good morning and a smile. I greet the doorman with a smile. I smile at the cashier in the subway booth when I ask for change. As I stand on the floor of the stock exchange, I smile at the people who, until recently, never saw me smile. I soon found that everybody was smiling back at me. I treat those who come to me with complaints or grievances in a cheerful manner. I smile as I listen to them, and I find that adjustments are accomplished much easier. I find that smiles are bringing me money. Every day, I share my office with another broker. One of his clerks is a likable young chap, and I was so elated about the results I was getting that I told him recently about my new philosophy of human relations. He confessed that when I first came to share my office with his firm, he thought me a terrible grouch and only recently changed his mind. He said I was really human when I smiled. I have also eliminated criticism from my system. I give appreciation and praise now instead of condemnation. I have stopped talking about what I want. I am now trying to see the other person's viewpoint. And these things have literally revolutionized my life. I am a totally different man, richer in friendships and happiness, the only things that matter much after all. And let me read that again. I think it's worth reading again. So, quote, I am a totally different man, richer in friendships and happiness, the only things that matter much after all. Suppose you don't feel like smiling. Then what? Two things. First, force yourself to smile. If you are alone, forcing yourself to whistle or hum a tune or sing, act as if you were already happy, and that will tend to make you happy. Here is the way psychologist William James put it, quote, action seems to follow feeling, but really action and feelings go together. And by regulating the action, which is under the more direct control of the will, we can indirectly regulate the feeling, which is not. Thus, the sovereign, voluntary path to cheerfulness. If our cheerfulness be lost, is to sit up cheerfully and to act and speak as if cheerfulness were already there. I like that principle. Everybody in the world is seeking happiness, and there is one sure way to find it by controlling your thoughts. And it is possible to do that. This is what we're reading, you guys. All right. Everybody in the world is seeking happiness, and there is one sure way to find it by controlling your thoughts. Happiness doesn't depend on outward conditions, it depends on inner conditions. And I've heard it once said, true happiness is not having what you want, but wanting what you have. I couldn't agree more. It isn't what you have or who you are or where you are or what you are doing that makes you happy or unhappy. Ah, ha, 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 that's funny. And I am reading this song for the first time, truly. It is what you think about it. For example, two people may be in the same place doing the same thing. Both may have about an equal amount of money and prestige, and yet one may be miserable and the other happy. Why? Because of a different mental attitude. I have seen just as many happy faces among the poverty stricken farm workers toiling in the devastating heat of the tropics as I have seen in air conditioned offices in New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles. There is nothing either good or bad, said Shakespeare, but thinking makes it so. Abe Lincoln once remarked that, quote, most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be, end quote. He was right. I recently saw a vivid illustration of that truth. I was walking up the stairs of Penn Station in New York, and directly in front of me, 30 or 40 boys on canes and crutches were struggling up the stairs. One boy had to be carried up. I was astonished at their laughter and gaiety, and I spoke about it to one of the men in charge of the boys. Quote, oh, yes, he said. When a boy realizes that he will not be able to walk for life, he is shocked at first. But after he gets over the shock, he usually adjusts to his condition and then becomes just as happy as any other boy. I felt like taking my hat off to those boys. They taught me a lesson I hope I shall never forget. I felt like taking my hat off. Sorry, peruse this bit of sage advice from the essayist and publisher Albert Hubbard. But remember, perusing it won't do you any good unless you apply it. Quote, whenever you go out of doors, draw the chin in, carry the crown of the head high, and fill the lungs to the utmost. Drink in the sunshine. Greet your friends with a smile and put soul into every handshake. Do not fear being misunderstood and do not waste a minute thinking about your enemies. Try to fix firmly in your mind what you would like to do. And then, without veering off direction, you will move straight to the goal. Keep your mind on the great and splendid things you would like to do. And then, as the days go gliding away, you will find yourself unconsciously seizing upon the opportunities required for the fulfillment of your desire, just as the coral insect takes from the running tide the element it needs. I gotta say, I'm really liking this book. All right, let's keep going. Picture in your mind the able, earnest, useful person you desire to be, and the thought you hold will transform you hour by hour into that particular individual. Though thought is supreme, preserve a right mental attitude, the attitude of courage, frankness, and good cheer. To think rightly is to create. All things come through desire, and every sincere prayer is answered. I could agree with that. We become like that on which our hearts are fixed. Carry your chin in and the crown of your head high. We are gods in the chrysalis. The ancient Chinese, wise in the ways of the world, had a proverb that you and I ought to cut out and paste inside our hats. A person without a smiling face must not open a shop. I agree. I agree. We should be joyful in everything we do. And the Bible says, do it as you would unto the Lord, with joy in your heart and not fear, right? All right, let's keep going. We're almost done, guys. Your smile is a messenger of your goodwill. Your smile brightens the lives of all who see it. To someone who has seen a dozen people frown, scowl, or turn their faces away, your smile is like the sun breaking through the clouds. To someone who has seen, especially when that someone is you, under pressure from your bosses, customers, teachers, parents, or children, a smile can help you realize that all is not hopeless, that there is joy in the world. Some years ago, a New York City department store, in recognition of the pressures its sales clerks were under during the Christmas rush, published an advertisement that included the following philosophy and made an unusual plea to their customers. Here we go, guys. And we are almost done. We're on the last page. The value of a smile at Christmas, and this was the publication, it costs nothing but creates much. It enriches those who receive without impoverishing those who give. It happens in a flash, and the memory of it sometimes lasts forever. None are so rich that none are so rich they can get along without it, and none so poor but are richer for its benefits. It creates happiness in the home, fosters goodwill in a business, and is the sign of a friend. It is rest to the weary, daylight to the discouraged, sunshine to the sad, and nature's best antidote for trouble. I find when I smile, I just feel better, makes my heart feel better. Yet it cannot be bought, begged, borrowed, or stolen, for it is something that is no earthly good to anybody till it is given away. And if in the last minute rush of Christmas buying, some of our salespeople should be too tired to give you a smile, may we ask you to leave one of yours? For nobody needs a smile so much as those who have none left to give. Principle 2, smile. I love it. I love it, you guys. All right, guys, that's it for today for part 2, principle 2 of how to win friends and influence people, 6 ways to make people like you. And the second one was uh, a simple way to make a good first impression, and it's simply by giving a smile. How easy is that, you guys? All right, you guys, thank you for joining me. You guys remember to come back tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Big Russ and I are going to be diving into read the Old Testament chronologically. I haven't figured out a good title for it simply because we're going to be traversing so many stories. We're reading it in date order as it happens. So we're going to take it to the chapter 5. We're pulling from different reading plans. And remember, we're also pulling from 3 translations. We're pulling from the Geneva, which is also known as the Ethiopian, and we pull that from BibleGateway.com. And then we pull from the King James Version as well as the New International Version. So, you guys, we're going to be getting into a lot. It's going to be a long journey. We're going to kick it off tonight, and then the definitive schedule will be Wednesday and Sunday. We'll come out more with the times. You guys, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time here on Bobina's Book Nook, a division of RC Squared, a podcast for the people. You guys, thank you for joining me. Peace out. See you tonight. When did we get away from the face to face? When did that happen? If that is true for writing fiction, you can be sure it is true for dealing with people face to face. I spent an evening in the dressing room of the great magician Howard Thurston the last time he appeared on Broadway. For 40 years, Thurston, the acknowledged dean of magicians, had traveled the world, creating illusions, mystifying audiences, and making people gasp with astonishment. More than 60 million people had paid admission to his show. He had earned millions of dollars. I asked Mr. Thurston to share with me the secret of his success.